Well, hey there and welcome back to Heimler's History. Now, we've been going through Unit 4 of the AP Government Curriculum, and in this video, that means it's time to talk about how we measure public opinion. So if you're ready to get them brain cows milked with a low sampling error, then let's get to it. So this video is simple, and here's what we're trying to do. Describe the elements of a scientific poll. Okay, now so far in this unit, we've been talking about how people come to hold certain political beliefs, and all sorts of people, especially politicians, are interested in knowing those beliefs, so how can they do that? Well, the main way we measure public opinion is through scientific polls, which is to say we ask people what they believe and hopefully they tell us. And the information that pollsters get from these polls have a big impact on elections and policy debates. If a poll is created with scientific rigor, then they are the best tools we have for measuring public opinion. The process includes writing questions that are as free from bias as possible and then presenting them to a small randomized group of people and then generalizing those results to the larger population. So first, let's have a look at the different ways pollsters measure public opinion, and then we'll have a look at how they know those results are accurate. So there are 4 different kinds of polls that you need to know. First is an opinion poll, which is exactly what it sounds like. Pollsters use an opinion poll to get a feel for the public's opinion on a certain topic or discerning people's feeling on certain candidates or policies. And so when a candidate starts making speeches and promising certain things, it's not because the candidate is just pulling those policies out of thin air. No, they have paid attention to the opinion polls and are now making promises based on what the people actually want. Second is a benchmark poll, and this is a poll taken at the beginning of a candidate's run. This gives the campaign a benchmark against which they can compare future polls to see how the candidate is faring. Benchmark polls often focus on a candidate's messaging, and when they figure out which messages are resonating with voters, they'll spend more time on those messages and throw the others away. Third is a tracking poll. These are polls that are conducted over time, usually with the same group of people, and that gives information on how the group feels about an issue. This helps a candidate shape his or her campaign promises, especially when the election is near. And fourth, you have entrance and exit polls, and these are polls conducted at voting sites and ask people how they voted. If they ask them before a person goes in to vote, that's called an entrance poll. If they ask after they have voted, that's an exit poll. These kind of polls are among the most desirable because they're measuring actual voters, not just people who may say they're going to vote and then don't for whatever reason. Well, it's election day, but my toe hair ain't gonna shave itself, so... Okay, so those are the different kinds of polls you need to know, and their purpose is to measure public opinion. Now, the real question is this: how do we know that these measurements are legitimate? Well, the short answer is that good polls are created with scientific rigor. So how do they do that? Well, the first thing you need to know is how researchers choose the people they're going to ask, and for that, let's talk about sampling techniques. Pollsters always measure public opinion by means of a sample. I mean, think about it. If you're a pollster and you want to measure public opinion, then the best way would be to ask every American of voting age what they think about an issue. But then you'd be surveying like 256 million people, and just in case you'd like those results in fewer than 400 years, you're going to need to measure the opinion of a sample of those people. Now, in order to be scientifically rigorous, a sample first needs to be representative, which is to say the sample needs to have the same characteristics as the larger population that it's measuring. So if you want to know what millennials think about the legalization of marijuana, then you need to ask a small sample of millennials and not senior citizens. Now, a sample also needs to be random, which means that everyone in a given population has an equal chance of being included. Now, once a pollster has gathered a representative random sample, then he or she makes sure that the makeup of the sample matches the larger population and then makes adjustments if need be. So the percentages of the sample should match the percentages of the population when it comes to demographic categories like male, female, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, etc. And once all those balances have been achieved, then the pollster can measure their opinion on an issue and then generalize those responses to the larger population that the sample represents. Now, in a perfect world, the sample would match the general population's opinions exactly, but if you've been alive for more than 5 minutes, you already know that we do not, in fact, live in a perfect world. So that means there's always the possibility of sampling error, which means that there is always a chance that the sample will not exactly represent the general population. However, in general, if a poll has a plus or minus 3 sampling error, that's considered a good and representative poll. So getting a good sample is one way that pollsters know that their results are legitimate. Another way they strive for accuracy is by asking neutral questions, and this just means that the questions are neither confusing nor leading. And scientific pollsters take great care in making sure that their questions measure what they really want to know, because the way questions are worded can have a big effect on results. For example, if you wanted to measure public opinion on COVID vaccines, here are 2 ways to ask the question. Should the government violate people's personal liberty by requiring vaccination against COVID-19? Or should a COVID-19 vaccination be required? Now, depending on how you word that question, the results will vary. Now, the last thing we need to talk about is survey methodology and the different ways pollsters can measure public opinion opinion, and for our purposes, you just need to know two. First is the mass survey, and really most of what I've said in this video applies to the mass survey technique. This is when pollsters put together a questionnaire that can be given to as many people as possible, and since they're going big with a survey like this, mass surveys can really only measure quantitative data. So if a group wants to know how many people favor a change in immigration laws, that's what a mass survey is for. On the other end of the spectrum is the focus group, which is when pollsters measure the opinion of a small group of people. This method is better for collecting qualitative data, which provides more in-depth data about how people feel and think. The benefit of a focus group is that respondents can flap their mouth hole at length about their opinions rather than just being confined to a couple of options on a survey question. Now, maybe it's obvious, but focus groups aren't considered scientific polling because their opinions can't really be statistically generalized to the larger population. However, focus groups can help a candidate refine his or her message. Okay, thanks for watching. Click right here and grab a review packet, which is going to help you get an A in your class and a 5 on your exam in May. And if this video helped you and you want me to keep making them, then by all means subscribe and I shall oblige. Heimler out.